Bureau of Labor statistics show that 35% of private industry employers provided a pension during the 1990s, the early 1990s. That's great. In 2011, that number dropped to 18%. So why the drop, and what does it mean for you? Here to break it down is one of Southern Nevada's premier retirement advisors. That is Nick Strohbelt of Ashton Strohbelt. How are you, buddy?
Doing great, great. Glad to be here.
So why this steady decline in pension plans for working Americans?
That's a great question, but if you think about a traditional pension plan, you think of someone that's worked for an employer for 20, 30 years, and then the employer has an interest and promises to pay that employee after they retire for the rest of their life. And maybe their spouse would have a benefit as well for the rest of the spouse's life if something happens to the former employee. But that traditional sense of a pension plan is what that statistic is referring to, and that is essentially going away because there's a conflict, and what the conflict is companies have on their books a liability for each employee that retires. They have to pay and be responsible for that employee's retirement, and that's a big burden for many companies, and so they want to avoid that burden and shift it away and really give the responsibility to the employee or the worker to take care of his own retirement after the retirement date takes place. And so really it's a shift of liability from the company to the employee. Is the main reason.
So who is getting pensions nowadays? I've never had the opportunity.
Yeah, neither have I, unfortunately. Really, if you work for a state or local government, many of those still offer pensions, the traditional pension. If you work for some large corporations still offer them, not all, but some do. If you work for a utility company, many of those still offer traditional pensions. If you work for sometimes if you are involved in a union may give you a pension option as well that you can participate in, but everyone else, you're pretty much out of luck. So if you're a small business owner or an independent contractor or work for a small company, you might get a 401k option, but not a traditional pension in the sense.
Those days seem to have passed us. We see on the news every so often companies doing pension buyouts. What's a pension buyout?
Oh, that's a great question. So say you were working for a large corporation that offered a pension. You put in 20, 30 years. You had a vested balance there. The company might approach you during retirement, right before your retirement, and say, okay, instead of our responsibility of giving you a lifetime benefit payout that we're responsible for, we're going to give you the option to take a lump sum benefit in a check, in the form of a check, and now you, as the former employee, are responsible to manage your own retirement. And really the responsibility of the employer is now eliminated if the employee accepts that lump sum check. So the option is given to you, but it may or may not be a good idea. That's why I say be very careful. You have to do the math, because an employer, obviously there's an incentive for them to offer the buyout to reduce their liability, but does it make sense? And that's why doing the math is important, because if you think of a traditional pension, it might pay the employee, it might pay the employee's spouse for their entire lives. But the question you might have to ask is, does it pay for anything else if something happens to you and your spouse? Is there any benefit that goes on to your estate? If you only are accepting the pension benefits for 2 or 3 years and something happens to the both of you, what kind of extra funds go to the estate? And that's a big question. But also, if you take the lump sum amount, where can you put it that would be better than what the pension might pay you from the former employer? That's a question of doing the math might result in some answers there.
Well, let's talk about what do you replace a pension plan with?
Yeah, and that's a good question. If there's some things out there, so for everyone else like us who don't have a pension, there are ways to create your self-funded pension plan. And the way to do that is by going to an insurance company, and then they will insure a lifetime income benefit for you for the rest of your life and your spouse. And often the difference is with something like this is if something happens to you or something happens to your spouse, the benefit would pass on to your beneficiaries. Whatever unused component or portion that you didn't consume during your retirement years would pass on to your estate. So really, when someone's trying to decide whether they want to keep their company pension or move it over, doing the math of comparing apples to apples is really the only way to do it, so you can feel comfortable making the right decision.
And that's where you guys come in, and you're able to help us.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's great having you as always. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Great to be here.
Great having you. And if you'd like to learn more how to plan for your retirement, you can call Ashton Strobel. Actually, if you call right now, they're giving away 20 copies of the book, 5 Retirement Myths. It's from author Patrick Kelly. The number to call is right there on your screen. Ashton Strobel, they're a proud sponsor of the Morning Blend, and they're providing the prizes for this giveaway. Ashton Strobel, they're located on St. Rose Parkway in Henderson. And for more on Nevada's Retirement Brothers and how they can help you get on the right financial path, visit the website or call the number on your screen. We'll be back.
Where you can see every couple tries to stop.